Welcome to Clarke Tech. In this recording, I'm going to answer the question, what is JSON? JSON is known as a data interchange format. What that means is it's a common format which programs use to exchange data with other programs. And these days, it's pretty much everywhere. You're going to end up using JSON regardless of which programming language you use. The good news is, however, it's very, very easy to learn. So I can guarantee you that by the end of this recording, in 10 minutes time or whatever, not only will you be able to write your own JSON, you'll also be able to use it in programming languages like Python and JavaScript. So let's do this. Some housekeeping first. Choose high definition for the best viewing experience, and if you want to join a growing group of developers and take your skills to a new level, all you need to do is subscribe and click the little notification icon, and welcome. The name JSON actually stands for JavaScript Object Notation. However, you shouldn't attach it to JavaScript because, though inspired by JavaScript objects, it's now independent of any one programming language. JSON is a human-readable data interchange format. It's easy for a human to read and write it, and it's also easy for a computer program to read and write it. And this makes it perfect for different applications which may be written in different programming languages to be able to use it in order to exchange information. And it can be used by all modern programming languages. I'll shortly demonstrate how programming languages such as JavaScript and Python can convert it into data types which those programs use and understand. And you'll probably notice just how similar it looks to some of the data types which those languages use. For most programming languages, there's a certain familiar look and feel to JSON, which you can't say about other data interchange formats such as XML. It's also very adaptable. You may have heard people refer to JSON APIs. What they mean by this is an interface through which two different systems communicate, and they do so using the JSON format. This is now easily the most common type of API, but in addition to this, we commonly use JSON files to store things such as application configuration and data. And perhaps the main reason for its popularity is that it is simple and minimal, and as I'm now about to demonstrate, it's very easy to learn. So let's write some JSON. What you'll tend to find is you'll get JSON in string format, which is sent between servers used in APIs, etc. And then you'll have JSON, which is stored in JSON files. I'm going to open up a JSON file because it'll be easy for us to write some JSON this way. And so I'm going to call this products, and I append on .json because it's a JSON file type. At the time of recording, JSON supports 6 different data types, and we'll go through them one by one. First off is object, which is a collection of key value pairs wrapped in curly braces. And just by creating these curly braces in my file here, I've actually created an object. Okay, let's add some key value pairs so I can show the different data types. This products JSON file is like a record of a company's inventory, so we'll add a company name. And this is a string, which is a sequence of Unicode characters inside double quotes. So basically textual data, and you'll see this quite a lot in JSON. If you have written any JavaScript code, you'll probably have noticed that my keys, i.e. the names on the left, are wrapped in double quotes. That's an important thing to remember because in JavaScript your keys don't actually need to be wrapped in double quotes, but it's something which is mandatory in JSON. The next type that I'll show you is the number. This is a decimal number which can include negatives and also exponential E notation, which looks like this. What we're going to do though is stick with just a plain old number because we're going to say that our item count in this inventory object will contain 2 items, i.e. 2 products. Next up, we need to represent those products, and we shall put them in our next data object, which is an array. An array is an ordered list wrapped in square brackets, and inside the array, much like a JSON object, you can put any of the allowed data types. So we'll use an object to represent each product which is available in the inventory. Each of these objects will hold data regarding that product, and one of those pieces of data will be whether or not the item is in stock, which lends itself perfectly to the Boolean type, which can be either of the values true or false. Notice that booleans aren't wrapped in quotes, very important, for the final type is actually an empty value. I'm just going to duplicate this first object here, change some values, and if you look at the price, the value is null, which is an empty value using the word null. An important distinction which I should point out about null in this scenario, it does not mean that the price is 0. It means that this item has simply not been given a price. It's an empty value. One thing I should point out, which you may have already noticed, is that these key value pairs are all separated by commas, and also if you look at the items array, each of the separate objects in that array are also separated by commas, but there's no comma after the last items. Okay, to give you a good understanding of JSON's uses, I'll now demonstrate how two applications written in different programming languages can use JSON data in order to understand each other. Here I've created a HTML file called json-demo.html. Just going to add a JavaScript script, so script type equals text/JavaScript, and inside of that I've pasted in a JavaScript object. Notice the lack of double quotes. They look very similar. This is the JSON object in the products.json file. But what we're looking at in the HTML file is JavaScript. This is a JavaScript object. And what I'm going to do is, using a built-in JavaScript function called stringify, I'm going to convert this to a JSON string, because that is typically the format which is used when different applications communicate with each other over the web through APIs. We'll log this out to the console using console log, and we'll inspect it and copy it. So console log json.stringify, and then I pass in the products object. Let's go over to the browser now. You can open Chrome Developer Tools using the keys on your screen, and as you can see here under the console tab, we now have a string containing our JSON. Note the double quotes. This is JSON format now, not JavaScript. I'm going to copy this and we're going to take it and drop it into a Python program where we shall convert it from JSON into something which Python understands. Hopefully you'll have noticed just how easy it was to convert from JavaScript to JSON, and you'll see in Python it's just as easy to convert from JSON into something which Python understands, and it's pretty much the same in all modern programming languages which use JSON or which support JSON. So here I'll paste in the string which we copied from the browser, wrapped in single quotes. Now, whereas in JavaScript the JSON objects get converted to JavaScript objects, in Python they get converted to dictionaries, which are a Python data type. And a dictionary is a structure which contains key value pairs, much like JSON objects, and they do look very similar, as you'll see, but there are subtle differences. The way that we make the conversion is using the JSON module from Python and then the load s function. So JSON load s, pass in our product string, and that will now convert that into a dictionary. And so that means we can go and search that dictionary for pieces of data that we want. For example, if I want the name of the first item, I just have to obtain it like this. So I'm going to print this out so that we can look at it in the console. Products dict, and then items, which is the key. I'm after the first item and then the name of that first item, and hopefully we should see 3D printer in the console. Let's go and check this out. I can execute the file using Python and then the file name, and as you can see, 3D printer. So we can see it's been converted to Python language. I'm able to access the pieces of data in my code. What I'll do now is I shall print out the dictionary so we can have a look at it. I'm going to use a module called pprint, which means pretty print in Python, and this will format it in a way which makes it nice for us to read. So pprint, and then I just pass products dict, go back to the console, run the file again, and here is our dictionary. And you're probably looking at this and thinking, well, that looks just like JSON. Few subtle differences. Look at the capitalization of the booleans. Also, this item or this structure, which looks like an array in Python, this is actually called a list. And also, instead of null, we have something called none. So, very similar, but there are subtle differences which you should look out for. But you can see why JSON is popular with developers, because say you're a developer in Python or JavaScript, there's already something built into the language which looks very similar to JSON and is easy to work with in order to access the pieces of data that you want. And to communicate with other applications over APIs, you've seen that it's very easy to convert to and from JSON in the language that you're working with. If you got value from what you've watched, then give it a thumbs up and don't hesitate to share if you want to help other developers like yourself. That's what good developers do. And finally, if you want YouTube to show you more of my stuff, all you need to do is subscribe and click the little notification icon. I release new material every few days. Details of my schedule can be found on the community tab of my YouTube channel homepage. I'll see you in the next one.